Alright guys, so in this video I'm going to talk about making a 10 volt regulator for your Nerf guns so you don't have to use the D-cell batteries anymore. This is the case that comes with some of the Nerf guns like the Nemesis, and they recommend you use 6 D-cell batteries. The only problem of course is that's like $30 every time you have to buy them, and they only last so long. Whereas nowadays, in today's world, lithium batteries are so popular, you should be able to use lithium batteries in just about everything and recharge them and not have to rebuy them. So if you modify the Nerf gun with a straight 3-cell lipo, it tends to be too much for the internal wiring of the Nerf gun. But what I've found is if you go 9 or 10 volts, 10 volts in particular is a huge performance upgrade, but it's not so bad that the gun burns up, and it's like the wiring can take 10 volts. You just don't want to go much above that. 9 volts is closer to the stock voltage, so if you did a 9 volt regulator instead of the 10 volt ones I use, that would work as well. But if you want to get a little bit of a performance boost for not much money, a good option is to just make a 10 volt voltage regulator so that you plug your battery into it, your 3-cell lipo battery into it, and it gives you 10 volts out to the positive and negative in this, and then this just slips into the gun like you would normally do with your battery. So I've used several different types of batteries with this. A lot of times I'll use a bigger battery, like a 5-cell or a 5 amp hour battery, and this will last for hours and hours. So you don't need as big of a battery as this. It's just kind of convenient if you don't want to have to recharge and all. So just a nice 5 amp hour 3-cell pack, and you're good to go for a long time. Another good option, if you like just the 18650 cells, you can get these in a lot of different ways. These are in just so much, and you could do the same thing. You could drop this in there and plug it right in, and depending upon your charger, you can even wire it straight to the voltage regulator and then just charge through the balance port. They sell chargers for like $10 that you can charge through the balance port. You can wire this directly and you're good to go. You just drop that in your gun. You could go with just a straight 3-cell pack. Depending upon which cells you have, these ones aren't an overly high discharge cell, so I put 2 of them together so that it's a 4 amp hour battery. So this isn't much less than that other one, just doesn't have quite as high of an amp draw, but the voltage regulator kind of drops it down to 10 volts anyway, so this is a good inexpensive way to do it as well. So anyway, I'm just going to show you real quick how to make the voltage regulator. It really doesn't cost very much. I mean, a little bit of wire and some voltage. What I'm using is the 7809 or 10, depending upon if you want 9 volts or 10 volts. I use the 7810 voltage regulators, and these you could get, for $1 or less. If you buy them in bulk, you can get them really cheap. You could buy a set with all the different types in it if you want. They're rated at 1.5 amps each, and what I found, at 9 volts the gun pulls about 4 amps. At 10 volts it pulls 6. It could even go a little above 6 amps when you're spitting guns out or bullets out. So 6 amps means you need probably at least 3 of these. I use 4, and I could feel the heat in 4 of them, but it doesn't get overly hot, so I feel like that's a good one to go with, is 4, because depending upon the heat sinks you use, you know, you're talking 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6 amps is what 4 of these together, as long as you use some heat sinks and stuff. And it only spikes a little bit at 6. It's less than 6 most of the time. But like I said, it heats up. You can feel the heat in it, but it's not real bad. So basically, this is everything you need to make this, the voltage regulator. And then you could drop this in the gun, solder this to the positive, solder this to the negative, plug your battery in, and you're good to go. So this is what I'm going to show you how to make real quick. There's lots of different ways you can make it, you know, but this is just something that I've done it. I've made it a few different ways, and I feel pretty good about this. You can use other heat sinks. This is small enough; it fits in the gun well. So what I generally do is I just put a heat shrink on the back, or so I just stick a heat sink on the back of each of these 4. And you know, depending upon what heat sinks you get, this is another thing you can get. I got a big box of little aluminum heat sinks like this for, I don't know, a few dollars. It was really cheap. So, and so, yeah, I just stick these on them. That way it can dissipate the heat better. And comes with the thermal tape or whatever on the back, so it just sticks right to whatever. So you just stick these on all 4 of them. And then I just tape them together to make it a little bit easier. So you just line them up like that. Then you could take your thermal tape, you know, because this stuff withstands the heat. So you probably want to get something like this. You could glue it. I imagine you could glue them together. A lot of people use hot glue. The problem is hot glue doesn't handle heat very well, so you just want to be careful about something that can handle the heat. You don't necessarily have to tape them. I tape them just to make it easier to hold it together while I solder all the wires on. But once you get all the wires soldered on, that's what really is going to hold it together anyway. And one way that I've found works is if you bend each of the pins over, because you're going to run one line on each side and one line right down the middle. So I bend all the side ones over. That makes it easier to hold the wire, because you need one side. Basically, you have your positive in on this pin, your negative for both, in and out, and your positive on the output. So this is your lipo coming in, this is your 10 volts coming out. And to connect 4 of them together, all we're doing is we're adding a wire right across all 3 of those. And so the way I do that usually is I try to hold it still enough to be able to touch it with the soldering iron, but I just do that, and then I take a piece of I found 16 or 18 gauge is plenty good enough for a 6 amp draw. So, and then you just take your soldering iron and you solder it on, and I try to pre-tin it a little bit. Once you get the first one, it's easier to do the rest. So once you do one, then it just sits in that channel, and you can go down the line and do the other 3. I think it came off because it was still too hot. The solder was still hot. And then you just do the next one. You just want to make sure that you have a good connection on all 4 like that. And then you can kind of see that it's got a good connection on all 4 spots. Once you know that that's done, then you can snip off the extra. You're not going to need anything more than just those 4 connected. So like I said, this will be the lithium battery coming in. So we'll solder the wire to the battery right here, and that's the one side, and then you can flip around and do the other side. This one is going to be for the voltage out, the 10 volts that you're going to get out. And the same deal, you just set it on there. Really, the biggest thing is getting that first one started. Once you get that first one done, then the rest of them, it stops moving on you. So as you can see, the outer ones are pretty easy to do because you just kind of solder it right into that U that you make there. You just kind of drop it in there, put a bead on each one. So the two side ones are quick and easy. I'm trying to stay out of the way of the camera, otherwise I'd lean over a little bit more and it's a little bit easier. But and you can clip all those off, and so now we've got, this is the voltage coming in, this one's the voltage coming out, so we can clip this one off. So this is where the wires are going to go, and then we need to do the middle. So the middle channel's the tricky one. Doesn't hurt to really the middle one's the challenging one, right? Because you don't have that much space. So I tend to bend the wire down, and then I add a little bit of solder, and I go down the line. I bend it down, I add a little solder, and I bend over the one next to it, and I connect them all to each other. So those connect them all together. And I add a little solder to the next one. And then I push that one, the next one down on top of it. Solder, put a little solder on top of that one, and then I push the last one down on top of that. So now they're all connected together, but you still need to add something a way to kind of solder the connector to it, the wires to it. So then I add a last piece of copper across the top, kind of ties them all together. And I've used a fine tip solder iron, but I like the bigger tip because it heats up better and you don't have the hold solder joints. So if you put the wire right across the top and kind of just be careful with it, you can get it right on top of that center line, and then you can just do the same thing. You can go right down the line. And it's kind of the same deal. Once you get it started, you can usually go down the line pretty easily, and you're really just connecting that wire to all the rest. It takes a little practice, but once you do it, you'll find it's not too bad. And then you can look at it and you can really see that I've got a really good connection on this one. The next one, there's a big spot right there that's really good. And then the third one right here is really good. And the fourth one, same thing. So that worked out really well. And then the only other thing you want to do is make sure it's not touching any of the other ones. So it was a little closer than I'd like on this one. So you just go down the line and go, good clearance here. We got good clearance here now. Good clearance here, here. So that was the only one that was a little closer than I would like. So you know none of them are touching. So now we know we're really good, because all of these are connected and you got the line coming out here. All of these, you have the line coming out both sides, and all of these, the line coming out that way. So now that that's all done, you can clip a reasonable distance, and then we can add the wires. This one's the one coming in, so here it just depends on what type of connector you use. I like to use Dean's, but I know a lot of people use other connectors, or you can solder it straight to the battery depending upon your application, but I tend to do Dean's. And you just pre-tin the wires so that they'll stick real good. Generally a good idea to use heat shrink. Usually if you put the heat shrink on while it's still a little warm, it kind of melts itself, but I just use the tip of the soldering iron to make sure the heat shrink's on there good. And then I turn that over and I do the negative side. Once you've got the connector, then we need to add it to this. So again, this is the battery in, the black side, the side that's facing you. So we want to do positive, negative, just like this. And again, I tend to add heat shrink. When possible. And so, and then you put the positive on, or you can do the negative first, doesn't matter, but you just want to make sure you get a really good connection, where it just pretty much surrounds that wire. Just push it in there real good so that it surrounds that wire. So it's like completely engulfed it. And then you'll put the heat shrink up as best you can. And then you do the same with the positive. And you want to make sure that they're not coming in contact with each other. You can bend it out a little bit if you need to. There's plenty of gap there between them. So that's how you put the connector on. And that's that. You just double check, make sure nothing's touching, that you have enough space between them that you're not going to have any shorting out of any sort. And that's it. And then you do the other side the same way. And the other side, I usually put it on the positive side of that little tray, so I don't need a very long piece on the positive side. But you can just measure the the wire length that you need. Alright, and then we add it to this. We're good to go. So the black goes down the middle. Make sure you have a good solid connection, and then you can add some heat shrink. And positive. Same deal, you just add a little heat shrink to that. And that's it. You've made a 10 volt voltage regulator. So now any voltage you put in to the one side, any voltage you put in here at this battery, at this connector, it's going to come out 10 volts on this side. So then I add it to this, just like this, and I solder this. So I would drop it in here like that. You can use glue or whatever you want, or you can just have it flopping around in there. A lot of people glue everything on. I tend to use a little bit of Velcro, but it's whatever you got laying around will work just fine. So I put this on here like that, and then I'll drop that in a tray, and I'll solder this to this side, and I'll solder this one to that side, and then you just plug your battery into this, and you can use small little lipos like this one, or you can use the 18650 cells, or you can use bigger lipos if you want to just shoot all day long. Little 2 amp hour battery is going to last you for hours, so you really don't need big batteries. And that's all you have to do. And then if you don't trust yourself, you can always test it. You can get your voltmeter out. You can get your voltmeter out, and you could test it. Like this is This is a 3x2 cell pack of 18650 cells that I bought, that I built, and so you can test it and see that it's 11.95 volts. And then if I plug it into this thing I just made, and then I touch the wires, I can see that it is 9.99 volts out. So this voltage regulator I just made drops the around 12 volts down to 10 volts. And it'll do that with any 3-cell lithium pack. If you want to use just regular lipos like that, same deal. You've got 9.99 volts out of this battery too. And this battery is at 11.5 right now, so it's about half charged or something. So you can tell that it worked. So I know this is good to go in my case, and depending upon how much you want to cut up your case, like I said, you can snip out as much of this as you want. If you do use the small cells, you only need to snip a little bit down the middle. These fit in with almost no, you just cut some of the middle ones out, just a little bit of these out for a 3-cell 2 amp hour battery to fit in here, and then just stick the Velcro on, the sticky Velcro on there, solder the positive and negatives there, and you're good to go. And you could put some foam around it to keep it locked in more. You can tape it on if you want, however you want to hold it. So this has been working really good for me, and the performance is substantially better. So, well, all right, thanks for watching.